Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm wearing red because it's Friday. We celebrate those in the medical industry during COVID wearing a little bit of red. This is Baylee, Mia, and Nala's roadmap to success. Now, the Guardians here, one of the Guardians has gone to a bunch of my dog behavior workshops, and so she's familiar with some of the techniques we went over. So some of the things I'm going to cover here, we didn't cover too much in the session. I just want to make sure that we're covering all those things because these are important things for you guys to do. Let me adjust this a little bit closer. All right, so the first thing we talked about was exercise, and the Guardians actually have already identified this. So I'm just going to go through a run through. But for those of you who are watching, if a dog is under exercise, that's going to amplify the extra energy they're going to have. Is going to amplify usually the unwanted behavior problems that you have. So exercising dogs can set them up for success. Not exercising dogs can set them up for failure. So we went over some creative forms of exercise. One of the dogs like to fetch. That's a great way to exercise them. Just make sure that you figure out what that maximum number is. Remember, exercise should not be with anything in the stomach because the distended stomach. About 90 minutes after eating before we exercise, or just feed after the exercise. If you're feeding after exercise, make sure they have at least 10 minutes to recover before you feed them. So let me see. Playing fetch is great, but count and do it when the dog is hungry with an empty stomach, and just keep on fetching till the dog's like, you're crazy. I've done it 83 times. I'm not going to do it anymore. Now we know the maximum number. For most of these things, we're going to exercise about 50 to 75% of maximum number, and it's going to vary. Some of the dogs might need a little bit more exercise, maybe before kids are walking by the house or before the baby comes over. Or if we're going to practice thing with the fence, maybe we need a little bit less exercise. So you want to find that what I call the Goldilocks amount of exercise, and that's going to, and so you're going to have to go through a little trial and error in figuring out how much exercise the dog needs for any one particular activity, and then you can set them up for success. So fetch is a great one. I also like to do the Doggie Stairmaster. So again, you'd have one person, we'd have Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon lives here. And so we have him go down the bottom of the stairs. We has a bunch of treats. He calls Nala down. She comes down, gives him the treat, and maybe call it San Diego. And then they run up the top of the stairs, and then somebody up there gives her another treat, and we call this one San Francisco if we're using a California analogy. So one word that means to go down the stairs, one word that means go up the stairs. Remember, the treat should go in the mouth first. They should hear the command word after the treat is delivered to the mouth. Doggie Stairmaster, again, same thing. Empty stomach, max it out so you know what that maximum number is. 5 minutes on the stairs is equivalent to like a 20 to 30 minute walk, but we can do it inside. It's nice outside now, but it's going to be 1,000,000 degrees here in about a month, or during the wintertime when we don't want to go outside. So it's a nice way we can set them up, or if somebody's coming by, we can get them on the stairs really quickly and burn that energy before the guest gets a chance to arrive. Try to tell all of your friends, hey, before you come over, make sure you text us or call us before you leave to come over here. We're going to try to set our dogs up for success by getting them a little exercise. We need a little bit of a warning. And you might want to, if you want to know what it is, message me and I can send you the picture of the door Chotsky that I was telling you about that has instructions. Don't ring the doorbell. Text us before you come here. If our dogs are excited or jumping or barking or any of those things, ignore them. When the dogs are calm, reach to pet them. If they get up, pull your arm back. And if they're completely calm, then you can give them a treat. So eventually you can get your guest helping you out. Now remember, when you guys are coming home, because right now it's during Corona, we don't have a lot of people who are coming by. So we need to practice the door exercise I showed you when I first came in, or whatever these things are, being calm at the door or whatever it is. So arrange, when you're doing these things, text each other when you're on your way home so you can practice the door exercise. I guess I'm just thinking we didn't really go through the door exercise here. But you could, the leash technique that I showed you, and I would probably do it more with the little dogs than the big dog for the leash. The leash activity is really for dogs that are very excited and happy. Nala was a little bit more, she was slightly excited, but it was more, I was aroused and in guard dog mode. And so that's not the best technique for that one, but it does work. Just make sure the guest is turned sideways. And if you forget how to do that one, just go to my website, search for honey jumping, honey like from bees. And there's a great video that shows, explains how to do all the ins and outs of that. All right, other forms of exercise. Because Nala is a smart dog, for dogs, using their nose is very stimulating and draining. So what I would recommend is you do Google scent games and just find some games that you can do where you hide treats around the house or hide them under cups, or you get puzzles, different things along those lines. If the dog has to use its nose to find them, it's using its brain, and it's very draining and stimulating. Same thing as stimulation. I'd like the Guardians to start feeding the dogs out of Snuffle Mat or an Omega Paw treat ball, probably a Snuffle Mat, because there is a little bit of, there have been some issues with regarding resource of food. Remember, when they're eating, This we'll talk about in rules in a sec for the humans, but when the dogs are eating or the dog has a bone, don't let the other dogs get near them. That's something that happens in this house a lot. Remember, for dogs, anything that they're doing that you don't specifically disagree with, that's done in your presence, is looked at as having your seal of approval. So not saying no is very similar to saying yes. And if a dog wants something for another dog or person, it's going to invade its personal space and try to make us feel intimidated and drop the item and walk away, and then that dog would take it. So that's how dogs kind of negotiate things. But you need to let the dogs know, no, that's not appropriate. I gave Baylee a treat or a bone. I want her to have it. No, you can't sweat her for the bone. They're going to keep on trying, and when they're doing that, remember, when they're trying, remember, they're not being defiant. They just want what they want. So we're going to consistently enforce the rule, and it might take 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. Eventually the dog will move away and lay down. It understands that no matter how many times I try, the guardians are not going to allow me to do that, and I'll learn to do it. That's just a behavior that's not allowed. That helps the dog that has the possession of the item see my humans are looking out for me, sees the other dog is trying to sweat and take that item, recognize that that behavior is no longer allowed. So let me see, the Omega Paw treat ball you can get on Amazon as well. That's something you can put down on the ground, but because there have been some possessive issues, I would only do that with one dog separately. I should have drank before I started this. Also, let me see what else. Don't be afraid to give the dog some time away from each other. We didn't really talk about that, but sometimes dogs are overly stressed and they need to get away just to chill out, just like a mom sometimes hands their baby to their husband when he comes home from work. She goes, you take the baby, I'm going to lose my mind. So we need to tag in and tag out a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm thinking for Nala especially, we might want to give her a time to go hang out in the bedroom with you and watch a little TV or read on your bed doing a little homework where the other 2 dogs are not allowed to be there, so she can kind of unplug and recharge her batteries. I think all 3 dogs think they're in charge for different reasons, and none of them are equipped to do it, and they're stressed. All of them are stressed out as a result of it. Other forms of exercise, you could play hide and seek with your dog in the house. Again, Google Scent Games, there's a whole bunch of different options for that. But if you can come up with a combination, maybe we do the snuffle mat feeding, and we do the treat toss on the stairs in the morning. Then we do fetch later on in the afternoon. Then we do the dog Stairmaster and a walk a little bit later on, and then so we come up with a rhythm or a system where we can start giving the dog the amount of exercise it needs that will fit into our schedule. And then keep in mind, we are eventually going to be done with this COVID thing, hopefully, and we'll go back to normal regular relations. Well, that's going to be hard for a lot of dogs. A lot of dogs are going to kind of develop separation anxiety because they're with us all the time. So one of the things I talked about in the video above about teaching a dog new tricks or commands, and I'm happy to share videos of how I teach a dog to stay. I do it for the 3 Ds separately. First for duration, till the dog can stay right here for up to 3 to 5 minutes. Only then start incorporating distance, moving away from the dog. And only the last one is where I incorporate distraction, the 3rd D. Most of us try to teach them all 3 together. It makes it 3 times as hard. But once your dog, especially because Nala does follow the primary guardian around the house, it would be nice if Nala had a stay command. We could say stay, and then the guardian could go get a drink of water, come back and release the dog. Stay, go to the bathroom, come back and release the dog. Stay, go change clothes. And so the idea is we want the dog to practice being separate from the guardian for very progressively for longer and longer periods of times, but we're going to increase that duration of time very progressively. We don't want the dog to practice freaking out. And I found that teaching a dog to stay is a great way to help the dog practice being calm while it's not necessarily next to us. From watching, we didn't move around a ton, but Nala was really Velcro dogged to one of the guardians. And when she goes back to school or work or whatever the case may be, that might create a problem. So I would start incorporating that stay now. Stay is one of the most difficult things for dogs to learn because it's the only exercise we do where we actually ask the dog to not do anything. Stay and don't do anything. Everything else is roll over, sit, give me the treat, or fetch, whatever it is. So this is why it's so hard. That's why I like to do for duration only first. Okay, we also talked about the importance of rules. Nala has rules. The other 2 dogs don't have rules. The other 2 dogs are really more out of balance than Nala is. Nala, being a herding breed, I think is trying to control the situation and try to create a positive association, I guess she's just trying to keep the other dogs from getting out of balance because they start barking, and that's when she gets worked up, and the time she's gone after them has been when that kinetic energy is going on and that franticness. So teaching the other dogs to be calm will help. Remember to use that calming exercise. We call it a settle exercise in puppy classes. When the dogs are nice and calm and you're watching TV, pet them from the base of their neck, nape of their neck to the base of their tail, along their spine in a very slow stroke, about 12 inches every 1 second, so about that speed. And the first 2 or 3 times I might do it, I might say Zen, yoga, settle, chill, whatever it is. So now I'm putting in context. When you're chill, you hear the word chill, and I'm giving this nice, soothing touch that is associated with what their mother did. And so eventually you can say settle, and the dog knows what it is that you want. Doesn't mean they will agree with you. That comes back to enforcing rules. So let's talk about the rules we talked about. So the first rule I usually suggest is not being allowed on the furniture because the higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. So I would say none of the dogs are allowed to lay on the furniture. Now I watched the dogs right over here. We're on the deck because it's Corona period, so we did the session outside for the most part. The dogs jumped up on the couch, so you might have to get the X-mats here or put the cushions down or do something so the dogs can't get up on there. So you can get those X-mats. Those would be really inside, but you can use them for outside as well. That's a nice way. Yeah, the kitty is saying, I want to come in. That's all right. Doesn't bother me at all. This is just for you guys. And so the idea is, hello, kitty. So the idea is to help the dogs see us acting like leaders because we're consistently enforcing the rule of not letting the dog on the furniture. And because that's a big ask, having those X-mats makes it a little bit easier. So when we go to the bathroom, it kind of enforces it for us. So I'd have one on each cushion. They're about $11 a piece. I would go to Amazon or Chewy. They're the cheapest place to get them. And eventually, if I have you have a big L-shaped couch in the living room, maybe I have 3 on this side of the L, 1 on each cushion. Well, after maybe a month and a half, I maybe take, instead of having 1, 2, 3, I take these 2 and take the middle one out and move these middle 2 together. So they're kind of on the cracks of the cushions. And eventually they kind of disappear, but the dogs are used to not getting on the couch. And at the same time, I would teach the dogs to go to the dog bed on command. There's 1 dog bed in the living room. I would have another one for the little dogs as well, or maybe 2 of the same size. I don't know if they all like to hang out together. I'm guessing probably little dogs and Nala separately. So the idea, and I have a video to teach you how to teach them to go to the dog bed on command, so message me if you have difficulty with that. Remember, you can go down to their level and cuddle with them as much as you want. They can sleep with you, but you guys go and get into bed first. And once the dogs are nice and relaxed and settled, then I invite the dogs up and I tell them where they're going to be on the bed. And just like I mentioned, if they come and get in the rook of your arm and in between you and you don't want it there, as soon as you do that, then you lose the bed privilege completely. So just making them go to a certain part of the bed is just going to cause them to go back there because they didn't lose very much. But as soon as, and it's going to be bang, bang. Remember, dogs will do repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have 3 seconds. So make sure you're Johnny on the spot. There's a big difference between 1/3 of a second and 3 seconds. So try to do it as quick as you can. Okay, so that's rule number 1. The other rule I talked about is, I talked about some others, but sitting at the door. So go to the door, tell the dog to sit. This is what's known as a pre-mac, which means that the dog, one less desirable behavior leads me to a more desirable behavior. So go to the door and tell the dog to sit 1 time. If it doesn't sit within 3 seconds, walk away. Hey, buddy. We have a neighbor black lab. It's a video Bub will help with. So go to the door, tell the dog to sit. If it doesn't sit within 3 seconds the first time I say it, I sit down at the kitchen table there nearby and pull out my phone or read a magazine on yoga or whatever it is I want to do. Wait 1 minute. Ask Siri or Alexa for your timer. And then after 1 minute, go to the door and tell the dog again, sit. If they don't sit within 3 seconds this time, I sit down for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Just make sure you're sitting down. If you're standing there, you kind of look like you're waiting on the dog. So eventually, when you go to the door, the dog will sit because as soon as it sits, that's when you open the door. There's 3 dogs in the house. So if I go to the door and I tell them to sit and none of them sits, I walk away. Wait 1 minute, come back, I say them to sit. And let's say this time Mia sits. When she sits, I open the door and let Mia out and I don't let the other 2 dogs go out. So I'm paying based on performance. And eventually, like I said, once they, and sometimes you have to do this with dogs separately, but eventually they all learn that sitting is what opens the door. And they'll go sit at the door as their way of saying, can I go outside, please? I would do it both directions as well. So the dogs do it both directions. I would also do it at the fence here or going into the house. I also make dogs stop and sit every time I cross the street. Before I let them out of the kennel, I tell them to sit. I don't even start reaching for the handle until they sit first. And if I start reaching for the handle, they get up, I pull my arm back, and I tell them to sit again. If they sit, I reach again. If they get up, I do this about 3 times. The 4th time, if I reach and the dog gets up, I just pull my arm back and I just sit there for 3 seconds. If it sits, I would continue. If it doesn't, I would walk away. So we want to start gradually increasing the criteria. Also, no dog should ever be in a kennel for longer than 4 hours. It will start releasing cortisol into their blood, and I've had hundreds, if not at least 1,000 clients who tell me, but my dog likes the kennel. And then a month or several months later, I hear from them like, now the dog doesn't like the kennel. The kennel is just very restrictive. I put a dog in a kennel if I have to worry about the dog destroying my stuff, or if the dog's gonna get in trouble, or accidents or soiling or something like that. So these dogs don't have these problems. So I would probably test them being out, where you put them out, and I would probably have the dogs, when you're leaving the house, have Nala separate from the other two because there have been some issues and there's not going to be supervision. We want to make sure nothing bad happens. But it'd be nice if Nala could be in one room and they could be in another room instead of having them all in the kennel the whole day long. That way they have a little bit more freedom. And again, we want them to be free and let us know there's a peeping Tom or there's a UPS guy or whatever it is barking to let us know about stuff. All right. So make sure you practice that when you're home. So put them there and then go sit in your car and watch the security camera on the Wi-Fi. Gradually make each time a little bit longer. If they just go and sit and lay down, start your timer as soon as you put them in there. Start your timer on your watch or your phone. And then if you do see they start barking in 15 minutes or whatever the duration is, you know they're good for up to 14 minutes. So what we want to do is practice them being in there for 14 minutes, bull them out. 14 minutes, do that 3 or 4 times. Then try to go to 15 minutes and then 60 minutes. Gradually raise the criteria. But if they bark and we go in there, or whimper or whine and we go in there, then they think the whimpering or whine is the reason that got them freedom. So if they are whimpering or whining and you want to let them out, wait. I would open the door and that break, that pause. So they won't whimper the whole time. They'll have little crescendos and then little lulls, and the lull is when you want to open the door. So they're like not whining is what got me out of the room. I'm thirsty. It's hot out here. Okay, so let me see. Other rules: not be allowed in the kitchen. Right now, Nala's not allowed in the kitchen. Sounds like just about any time, but the other 2 dogs are allowed to go in there. So what I would do is make sure that when you're cooking, none of the dogs are allowed in the kitchen. And again, before you do that, if you're worried about a potential fight or something like that happening, take them outside or do the Doggie Stairmaster, do whatever you need to exercise them first, then practice this. Now, I would recommend that if you that you teach them to leave the kitchen. So with one dog alone, go to this side of the kitchen, show you have a treat, roll the treat outside the kitchen, the dog runs in and gets it, say the word out. Then go to the other side of the kitchen, throw the treat out there. And I usually do this with every room in the house, so I can tell the dog to leave any room in the house. And then I usually stand outside the room and throw the treat in the kitchen. And when they look it up, I say the word kitchen, living room, dining, den, basement, etc. So you can come up with directional commands for your dog to go here or to go there. Let me see, what else do I want to go over? Getting back to sitting at the door. Once they're sitting at the door, then the next step is you might want to teach them to go out the door one at a time or to wait at the door for permission to go out the open door. And if you want to do that, you can message me or you can just go to my website and search for wait at door or just message me and I'm happy to show you. And again, I would practice all the dogs separately. Now, I would come up with a separate command word for each dog to exit the door. So I throw the treat out and the first dog's word is adventure, second dog's word is liberty, third dog's word is freedom, whatever it is. And put a little post-it note on your door. Dog name, command word. Remember to use fun command words whenever possible. Dogs read facial expressions, so if you use a fun command word, that helps motivate the dog to want to do it. I've also seen a lot of studies. Sorry, there's some bees over there. I've seen some studies, and I've also seen it happen in real life, that the more dogs do these things, the more comfortable and relaxed, and the more they're likely to continue doing them. All right, so let's see, what else do we talk about? Other rules: not being allowed to be within 7 feet of a human who's eating. And you can go to my website and search for invisible or kitchen, and it'll show you videos on how to teach those things as well. The only thing is I worry about Nala. Some of those videos talk about walking towards the dog and reverse herding the dog away from it. If Nala challenges you on it, don't do that and call me and we'll come up with a different solution. So I don't want to meet a challenge with another challenge, because that's just going to escalate in the wrong direction. I'd rather you get the dog to want to do the thing that we want it to do. All right, we went over petting with a purpose very basically, and we went over passive training. I'm going to go over both in a little bit more detailed here, just because Mom came to my workshop, and I think secondhand information got to the Guardian. Sounded like how the information got there, but we'll just go through it all anyways. So leaders tell, followers ask. So if the dog nudges me, it's telling me what to do. If I pet it, I'm validating and say, yes, you're my boss. When you tell me to do something, I listen to you. That makes the dog think it doesn't have to listen to you, and also makes the dog think it needs to protect you. And if the dog's job is to protect you, it's also the dog's job to correct you. Now, the only reason I mention this is because there's a family member that lives nearby that has a young child, and one of the guardians is worried that something's going to happen. Now, I don't think that's the case, because dogs can have dog aggression without it ever manifesting or transitioning to humans. But if the dog does think it's in a leadership position, there's more of a likelihood that that's a possibility. Now, Nala has more rules than the other dogs do, but teaching all of the dogs to follow the same set of rules would be, I think, beneficial in this case. So basically for, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. All right, so for petting with a purpose, leaders tell, followers ask. So if the dog tells me what to do, nothing happens now. You nudge me, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give the dog a counter order, tell it to sit. If it's already sitting here, I might ask it to sit over here, or I'm going to tell it to lay down. Don't ask for a shake. And then if the dog sits within 3 seconds of the first time I say it, then I reach over and pet him under his chin and I say, sit. And I pet as much or as little as I want to pet her. If she doesn't sit within 3 seconds, remember, hard to get, works great for dog training just as well as dating. So if she doesn't sit, pull back, grab your phone, talk to your partner, watch TV, do whatever it is. Show the dog I have other things to do. I made you my priority, but if you can't be bothered to listen to me, I'm on to the next thing, and it's no skin off my nose. This will start increasing the effectiveness of your petting because I'm not getting those willy-nilly or whenever on demand. I have to earn them. After a while, the dog will recognize I can't tell you what to do anymore. I have to ask, and I have to, better than ask, I have to actually pay you for the privilege of your attention, and I pay you the recurrency of obedience. And the dog will start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. When it does this, make sure you reach over and pet it. Otherwise, it's going to go back to nudging you, barking, or the rest of that stuff. Now, if you pet it a little, it sits, prepays, and you pet it and say sit, and pet it for a minute, and then you go back to doing what you're doing, the dog does it a second time, sit, pet it again, it does it a third time. Dog's probably telling you I have more energy. So ask yourself, how long has it been since the dog has had exercise? If it's longer than an hour and a half, I'd probably take the dog out and do a little doggy stairmaster, fetch, or whatever the case may be. Set the dog up for success. Okay, remember to use the watchword of paycheck. If someone's petting the dog with, and you suspect they forgot to pet with a purpose, you say paycheck. That person has to stop petting, even if they did it right. Tell the dog to sit. When it sits, say pet her on the chin, say sit, and say, actually, I asked him to sit, and you missed it because when you opened the door, she stood up, and I continued petting her, blah, blah, blah. It just gives you another opportunity to practice. We don't realize how often we pet without a purpose. So paycheck is not gotcha. It just means I think you might have forgotten. So even if we did it right, we comply, and it just gives another opportunity to practice again. Even if you want to pet the dog, you should still tell the dog to sit. If it doesn't get that attention. If you get in a habit of petting with a purpose, every time you pet your dog, 4 important things happen. Number 1, it increases the dog's respect for you as an authority figure because it's asking versus telling. Number 2, it helps the dog with its self-esteem because it's earning that attention as opposed to just being given it to for looking good. Number 3, it helps them practice basic obedience. The more they practice sitting for attention, the more they're likely to do it. Number 4, it makes your pets more valuable because if you don't do what I want, you don't get it. So it really, really becomes a reward, and it's very valuable. It works very well if you and everybody in the house gets in the habit of doing it. So really emphasize that for a month. After about a month, you'll get in the habit of doing it, and eventually the dogs will just do it automatically. Now, the flip side of that coin is what we call passive training. Passive training is petting the dog when it does things that we want it to do organically, i.e. when the dog does it on its own. So when the dogs walk up to me right now, I'd pet it and say, come. If it sat down next to me, I'd pet it and say, sit. If it laid down, pet it and say, crash, chill. When each dog eats, come up with a funny command word for each dog to eat. I have 3 dogs. I say chow, feast, and lasagna. Actually, grub, feast, and lasagna. Chow, Farley has gone off the great beyond. But basically, so now every time I take my first bite of food, I hear the word lasagna. The other 2 dogs hear lasagna. There's no food in their mouth. But when I hear lasagna, there's food in my mouth. So lasagna means I get to eat. So I'd have a separate command word for the dogs to go out the door for the rule of the door. Let me back up a little bit. So when you're teaching them to go out, it's to wait at the door. Once you can get to the point where you can open the door and they stay there, when you let them out, throw the treat out there, and when they lick it up, that's where each dog has its own unique command word to exit the house. And I have each dog have its own unique word to eat its food. You don't have to have unique words for a lot of things, but for when you're releasing dogs to do activities, having a release word is helpful because that way you can kind of control the situation a little bit better. Let me see. Make sure that another rule I forgot is the human who's feeding should not eat the dogs. Eat before you feed the dogs. All you have to do is eat something in 5 more bites, and then give the dogs permission to eat. When Bailey's eating or Mia's eating at this point, I'd probably feed Baylee first. But if Mia's eating first or Bailey's eating, we don't let the other dogs within 7 feet. And then when that dog's done, it has to leave. It leaves food in the bowl. We pick up the bowl, dump it empty. Make sure you put the empty bowl back on the floor. That part is empty. It is important. Excuse me. And once you get to that point, then I would switch over to the snuffle mat. Make sure you have a good, healthy meal feeding ritual before you get to that point. Let me see. So for passive training, what we're doing, getting back to that, is we're celebrating the things the dog does that we like. So that's a watchword I like to use is celebrate. So if you see the dog walk up to somebody and the person missed it, you say celebrate. That person stop what they're doing and start petting the dog under its chin and look at whatever the dog's doing. If it's sitting, pet it under its chin and say sit. If it's standing there, it probably came to you, pet it and say come. Again, use it for your dog's food. Name all of your individual toys. Now, all balls can be balls, all bones can be bones. But if you have a little, raccoon, call it Rocket. If you have a little elephant, call it Trump. Come up with funny command words for all the things, all the toys. So that way you can actually have a better direction for the dogs. All right, now I also went over the escalating consequences. I'm not going to go over those here on the video because sometimes people use those out of context. If you have questions about that, just let me know and I'm happy to go over those with you. Now, I'd like you to practice this stuff for a month. And what I'd like you to do is for the exercise that I have in the video above, I'd like you to come out here, spend about maybe the first 3 or 4 times each one of you does it inside, do about 10 treats inside. And maybe do this in lieu of a meal or before meals. Then you go, as soon as you come out the door, ask for a sit. And then maybe do 1 or 2 on the way to the steps, and then and then I would like you to have about 10 to 20 treats doing the lap, 1 or 2 laps around the yard. And once you get done with the 20 treats, then I'd like you to sit down somewhere in the yard and wait for the dogs to lose interest and walk away. And as soon as they do, a couple feet away, ask them for a come. When it comes to you, click, and then give it the treat and say come. And then stand still and wait for the dog to be boring, wait for the dog to lose interest and walk off, and then repeat it. Do that for, so the first maybe week, you're just walking out here and doing the lap. After about when you get to your second week, then I'd like you to start basically after your lap, your 20 treats there, and then so I'd like you to do 20 treats walking around, and then another 10 treats where you wait for the dog to lose interest and walk away, and you're asking it to come to you. I'd also like you to practice with each dog once a day the exercise of running away from the fence. So each dog's gonna have 2 exercises for this, for outdoor, for the clicker training. Just walking around and paying attention, sits, downs, and comes, and then specifically coming away from the fence. So anytime they go to the fence, I would make that your #1 priority. So if they go to the fence, immediately ask for a come, and especially do that when the dogs are not there. We want to limit also the dogs being in the yard whenever those dogs are there, if possible. I know you have the dog door, so you might put it down at times, but the more they go to the fence and yell at those dogs, the more they're practicing doing that, the more they're likely to do that in the future. The less they do that, the easier it's going to be to get them to come to you. Okay, so after the second week, what I'd like you to do is do everything I just described. Go in there, walk, do a loop, do 20 treats there, practice the recalls on a separate practice moving away from there. So I guess that'd be 2 different things. But when you do the lap, eventually after the second week, I'd like you to come up here after you do the 20 treats and just sit up here and enjoy the beautiful weather or do some homework or read or whatever. Wait for the dogs to go down there and then ask them to come back. So we're going to start practicing having them interrupt what they're doing, sniffing or whatever it is, and coming over here. If they are sniffing, try not to call them while they're sniffing because you're probably going to lose that battle and then they're practicing not listening to you. So just wait for them to walk around and then come. They run up here, and I usually like to make them sit before I give them the treat. And then, so as soon as they get to where you want, crazy sounds over there. I don't know what those sounds are. When they get close to the proximity, that's when you click, and then you give the treat and say, come. Eventually, I make them come and sit before I click to give them the treat. I kind of look at the sit as the formal finishing part of that. Let me see. Now, I want you to work on this stuff for about a month. So really, when we get into early June, kind of evaluate. Come back and watch this video especially, but watch the other one as well. The other one you might want to watch once a week and just to make sure you got all the elements until you're certain you got it. But this video here that summarizes everything, people will miss little bits and pieces. I'm going to go over a couple more here in a second. So watching this one again, sometimes people get to about 50% of stuff I covered in the first session and they forget about it. And if they rewatch this video, they recapture that other 50%. Then they spend another month working on that. A lot of my clients, this one session is all they need. If we need a follow-up session, let me know and we can set Kayla or Dominique or Taylor over here to work on the relaxation protocol with you and help the dogs practice being calm. And I think in your case, that's going to be really beneficial for all the dogs for different reasons. Now, make sure that you are doing a little bit of clicker training. So I'd like to have everybody who's here, the 3 amigos, kind of take, okay, this week you're going to do it, this week you're going to do it, this week you're going to do it. And that person who's leading is going to teach the dog a new trick or command. Find an easy one. Rep the heck out of it, teach the dog separately, and then all week long, you want to go outside, you want your food, you want to pet you got to roll over or play dead or beg or whatever the activity are. Don't teach them to shake though. Let me see. A couple of housekeeping things. Anything your dog is doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing. So if you pet your dog when it's nervous, you're going to make it more nervous. Barky, more barky, aggressive, and so on. So if your dog's nervous, anxious, fearful, something that's unbalanced or you don't want, you can lay your hand on them. They do associate this touch with affection. But as soon as you start petting or tickling with your arm, you're going to amplify the exact thing you're trying to get rid of. So the best thing to do is increase the distance between the dog and whatever it's reacting to until you can get the dog to sit and take a treat. Those are my 2 litmus tests. Let me see. Also remember that good attention and bad attention is the same thing. Burning energy is a form of currency for dogs. So if you want your dog to do something, tell it to do it. If it doesn't do it, walk over there and make it happen. Don't be physical about it, but let the dog know, I'm not going to just sit here and wait. I'm not going to ask you 23 times. You do it when I want you to do it right away. And don't be afraid to use jealousy. So if you're asking the dog to come and one of the dogs comes, the other doesn't, click with the dog who comes and reward the heck out of it. And then when the dog you actually asked to come comes, shun it. Don't give it any attention. You should have come when I came. When you came, look at the great attention your roommate got. That'll make the dog more motivated to want to come to you in the future. Now, if you have difficulty doing anything with the dogs, make sure you separate them and work with the dogs one at a time. Create the easiest version of that activity. Then break down the individual steps to that activity and practice the first step over and over in the easiest version until the dog's behaving the way you want. Only then, consistently, only then do I go to step number 2. I practice step 2 over and over and over again in the easiest version until the dog does it, and then I go to step 3 for all the individual steps. Once I've done all the individual steps in the easiest version possible, now I do all the steps together in the easiest version possible. Then I gradually start increasing the level of difficulty until I work my way back to that real world situation, or in this case, where the dog's performing great with the real world situation, then I would bring out the next best dog and I'd help them practice together step by step, and then eventually all 3 dogs. So you're really setting them up for success. Remember, don't be afraid to exercise them before things, just give them that 10 minutes to recover. Now, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. If I don't hear from you, I assume that means everything's going great. So if there are any questions or problems, make sure you let me know right away. Texting is the best way to reach me. Email, I get about 100 emails a week, so sometimes it's a little bit slower way to reach me. So don't hesitate. In about a month, if we still are having some of these problems, we can work on the relaxation protocol and help the dogs start to relax amongst themselves when the UPS driver comes or the dogs are barking or whatever the case may be. All right, well, this is Baylee, Mia, and Nala's Roadmap to Success. I'm David. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.